Good evening. This is the Plymouth Charter Commission in the Great Hall in Plymouth on Monday, October 17th. This meeting is hybrid, in person as well as via Zoom webinar, and can be viewed live on the local government channel 15, Comcast, and 47, Verizon. This meeting is being recorded. Zoom attendees must register using the Zoom webinar link on the Charter Commission page of the town website. And for public comment, use the raise hand icon on the lower portion of your screen. And the in-person audience, please use the podium and place your name on the sign-in sheet. So we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tonight's going to be largely taken up with edits and legalese. I was on a Zoom call today and somebody said, let's try to limit the legalese to 5th grade legalese, but I'm not sure how we can, we still have to do the edits. And we have the Attorney General's opinion letter, which came in last Thursday. And we have a few other edits that we may want to put in the charter. Then we'll discuss transition. And then the roadmap from here out for the next 3 weeks. So before we get to the letter of the Attorney General, there was one edit that became apparent that we may want to make, and it's been asked to move it up to the first part of our meeting. And that's in our preamble. And if you, as you know, in the preamble, we have a reference to the rights of nature with initial caps. And it's been suggested that that reference be stricken because it involves some baggage about the what are the rights of nature and how do you implement them and so forth. So we've had some suggestions that we ought to take it out of the charter. I did ask our legal counsel, Anderson Krieger, what he thought about the provision. And he did read the criticism that you've all received in your package. And our counsel's comment was it is not a frivolous concern. In other words, he thinks that there may be more risk in keeping it in than the value of trying to keep it in and defend it. Because it could come to pass that it could create a legal issue down the road, however strained it might be, it could still happen. So let's discuss the preamble comment of the item in the rights of nature. Betsy already did some additional drafting, which would take it out but substitute some other words. So that was one suggestion, and I've sent you her 3 emails about it. And then David Peck suggested just eliminating the capitalization of the rights of nature. So let's open it up for discussion. Yes. It's easy, there's nobody to my left. Wrestling.
Yeah, in discussion with the public, this was the biggest thing that they said would kill the charter. I have had discussion with a bunch of people in town, some important, some more important, but every one of them came to me and said, "Wrestling, you got to take that out, or I'm not supporting this charter." And they had minor things on the rest of the charter, but that was the one thing that they said,
Right.
please take it out, because there's no way the charter's passing with it. So
Okay.
I would be in favor of taking it out.
Yep. Betsy? Mike?
I liked what we received from the lawyer today, where he quotes the Constitution of Massachusetts. I thought that what I wrote kind of went along with what he wrote in his remarks. But the right to clean air and water, freedom from excessive and unnecessary noise, and the national, scenic, historic, and aesthetic qualities of their environment, those are all really great words. I included wildlife and plants. I don't know if that was well received or not, but I do think we can say what we want to say without using the legal term rights of nature.
Okay, Betsy, you sent 3 emails. Is the third one sort of the...
The third one was from Wikipedia actually stating that rights of nature is a legal
Right, okay.
opinion.
Given that we're of a mind to not use those 3 words necessarily, and in that they do present a possible legal problem, that would not be frivolous. I thought your suggestion on Saturday was the strongest suggestion, that you added a number 3, you separated out the environment, and you took open space out of number 2 and then added a whole new number 3, which dealt strictly with the environment. So that was a good suggestion. I did like the language in the original preamble, though, that used the words harmonize and so forth.
Use the word what?
Harmonize the rights with the...
Harmonize.
The words that were in the original preamble. David?
It would seem to me that those words, although they sound good, they're extraneous because they're covered under Chapter 97A of the Mass General Laws. So if they're under 97A, why do we need to repeat them in our
Well,
chapter?
I think there's merit in expressing the town of Plymouth, that we're right on board. It's kind of a reminder what Chapter 97 says. Frequently the town, at the local level, can express something that's in a broader document nationally, same as the state, and their state constitution picks up on the U.S. Constitution, but expresses it themselves. I think there's merit in expressing it, and not just refer to the Article 97, which a lot of people forget about.
My vote is to eliminate it.
Larry?
I like consistency. Might be the hobgoblin of small minds,
Right, yep.
but I have said a long time ago that things that are in state law don't belong in the charter, and was shouted down repeatedly by this body. So, so if we have a variety of places where state law is mentioned here for emphasis, then this could very well be a matter of we're saying what we're saying. I would like to know, Wrestling, since you spoke to people, I had no one come to me and speak negatively about this. Could you explain what it is about this that those people were upset about?
Sure. It went from the extreme of, if nature has more rights than I do, I'm going to lose my property. I think that it was, you have to talk to intent. When we're talking about our preamble and what we put in there, our intent is, well, we should be nice to the we should have a right to have a clean atmosphere and everything like that. It's the legalese of it is, it edges in that you have less rights on your property than you did before it. They were afraid that it was a slippery slope of that if nature has rights, then what if I put up a oil changing place? Is that against nature? It just was a slippery slope that they were afraid of. And they were, I got some very strong opinions that they said, rights of nature's got no business being in there.
Betsy?
That's why, Wrestling, I switched it to the rights of the citizen. You see, the thing I wrote was to ensure the right of the citizens of Plymouth. So to the preservation and maintenance of natural open space in order to protect our aquifer, our environment, our plants and wildlife, and the character of our town.
Betsy,
So-
speak up so we can hear you over here.
I'm sorry. I'll read it again so that everyone who's in the audience or in the watching can hear it. I changed it from the rights of nature to the right of its citizens to the preservation and maintenance of natural open space in order to protect our aquifer, our environment, our plants and wildlife, and the character of our town. So it's rather than the rights of nature, it's the rights of the citizen, which is also, of course, in the state constitution, but I think all of the things in our preamble are probably in the state constitution somewhere.
But I go back to intent. So what's the intent of that sentence? Is that intent? My concern is that someone could come in and say, well, we've got to give more money to CPC because it says right in the preamble that, we have rights that, I'm just going from what people are looking at the slippery slope, I know it's outrageous, but I just think when we go through the preamble, it has to go through intent. What do we intend to this mean? Do we intend to mean that, hey, we should have,
Clean
open
water.
space and clean water, okay? And what do we intend to do about that?
Wesley, the easiest change, I think, to make here is just to put a period after environment. Because actually, when you say all these things for the balanced for and protective of our natural environment, period, take out the words including the rights of nature. Because as soon as you add the rights of nature, you pick up a whole body, which I wasn't aware of until I researched these other cases.
Exactly.
The one in Toledo. I mean, there's a whole body that is ambiguous and is creating legal problems when the case has reached court.
Right.
And I don't want to burden this town with somebody trying to tack on to the rights of nature and causing a lawsuit. Just the word environment is all we really need. David?
Yeah, I totally agree, because, we spent a lot of time putting it together. This preamble is aspirational, it's not supposed to be prescriptive and so on. And harmony, balanced by and protective of the environment, I like. I appreciate Betsy's wordsmithing, but I agree, just stopping it at the comma. We also mention open space in the next one. So I think between harmony, balance, protection, and open space in all these aspirations, I would even move, for the purposes of moving along the discussion, that we just remove those, including the rights of nature.
Right.
Because keep it high level and not legalese at the detail, and it's broad enough and aspirational enough to cover what our intent is. And it's a lot better than our former preamble.
Yep. Someone
I'm
want to
good
make
with
a
that.
motion?
Yeah.
I'd second that.
So that's my motion, and I hear a second.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded that we revise the second paragraph under rights of nature to put a period after the word environment and strike including the rights of nature. Any further discussion?
I can accept that.
David accepts it. Betsy?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, are we ready for the vote? So all in favor of David Peck's motion, say aye.
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 All opposed? Abstaining?
I'm not going to choose to take side on that.
Okay, so it's 5 in favor of David's motion, 1 abstaining. Yes?
And I do want to thank Mr. Bolton for bringing this to our attention.
Pardon me?
I want to thank Mr. Bolton for bringing
Yes,
this to
right.
our attention.
Bill
Agreed.
Cohan,
That's
did
good.
you have a vote? I didn't see you. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Okay.
And I
So-
voted in support of the proposal. Are you voting now?
Just did.
Okay.
Yeah, we just voted to
My
strike.
mic was not on, my mic was not on when I voted in support.
Okay, so
We're good.
that takes care of that edit. Any further discussion? Very good. So let's move over to the Attorney General's letter, which we got last Thursday. It was actually a pretty clean letter, very few edits. there were just 3 items that the Attorney General suggested that we might want to consider putting some new language in or not. It's up to us. If we don't put it in, and it's later challenged, basically, these are suggestions and not mandatory. And there were 3 items of suggestions. One, the first one had to do with the language about opening the budget. And this was the first item on page 3. The language in the charter said that in 24-1, that the budget could be reopened from the Springtown meeting, could be reopened in the fall by a citizen petition article or any other applicable law, and the AG reminds us that once the tax rate is set, we can't amend the budget. But as our counsel pointed out in his letter today, you can open the budget, you just can't change the budget in a way that's going to affect the tax rate. So you can reallocate an item from one thing to another as long as the overall number doesn't change. Or you could use free cash to add to something that's already in the budget, so it's just not a correct statement. And he says his advice is we don't make any change there because it's not necessary. Yes.
I think this is, we're back to the same thing. What we're saying is, state law applies to Plymouth. That's the short form of what this says. And in reality, unless the state changes its rules, we pass the budget at the April annual town meeting. We can revise the budget in any manner we want at the October town meeting because the tax rate is not set until December. And after December, we can alter the budget, should we so choose, by adding and subtracting an equal amount or just subtracting. We can't change the tax rate, and therefore the amount of money that's going to come in. We can change the budget within that area. That's state law. This whole section is really unnecessary. It is only to alert the public that if there's something bothering them, they can call a special town meeting, they can propose an article at the annual town meeting, and therefore I agree with the chair. If we're not going to eliminate the whole area, just leave it there and let state law apply to Plymouth, which it does.
Right. Any further suggestions on this one? So let's again do a motion.
I move we
David?
leave the language unchanged.
Seconded? It's been moved and seconded that we don't make any change in the charter to address the specific item. We leave it in that any citizen petition article may be brought to reopen the budget. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Looks like that's unanimous. So we will not change the charter on that item. The second one is kind of interesting. This had to do with the open meeting law and caucus meetings, and the charter now says that the open meeting law applies to caucus meetings of town meeting representatives. And the Attorney General is pointing out that at the state level, according to her opinion, she says at the state level, it wouldn't apply to the caucus. Anyway, and even if we want to have a higher standard, which she admits may be our intent here, to say that the open meeting law is going to apply, even though it wouldn't apply according to state law, that the Attorney General is not going to enforce it. Because from a matter of state law, it is not enforceable, but we could still stay in our charter. Our counsel disagrees at the very beginning by saying he reads the law and the state statutes that the open meeting law does apply to the caucus because it's not the type of meeting that is subsumed by town meeting, because you can have these committees that operate independent of town meeting and outside of town meeting. And he points out that the Finance Committee, there's never been a dispute that the Finance Committee is subject to the open meeting law. And he suggests that so should our caucus. So, I mean, that's a sort of a fundamental question, whether the open meeting law applies anyway. But even if it didn't at the state level, we can still put it in our charter. So our council sees no need to make any change here. And that's his advice on this one. And I think we felt strongly that we thought the open meeting law should apply to the committee of precinct chairs and to town meeting caucuses,
Right, I agree. Yep,
either at the state level or any event here in Plymouth.
right.
So, any discussion?
I would make the change to leave our language unchanged.
Make the motion, you mean?
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded that we make no change in our charter with respect to the open meeting law as applicable to town meeting representative caucuses. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Looks like it's unanimous, thank you. And the last change suggested by the Attorney General had to do with the Housing Authority. We didn't make any change in this charter with respect to, it was already in our charter on the Housing Authority, but the law has changed a bit. So I think her suggestion, we should address it. The current statute says that 3 members of the authority are to be appointed. 3 members of the authority to be elected. 1 is to be appointed by the select board, who shall be a tenant, and the last member of the housing authority is to be appointed by the state. Our charter doesn't exactly say that. I think in our charter we say that 4 members are appointed. So, 4 members are elected. So we should conform the charter to the state law.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
You were
Bill.
cutting out in your last couple of, you got to that there'd be 1 person appointed by the selectman who's a tenant, and then you went to talk about what the next elected person you cut out.
Next appointed person is by the state.
Yeah.
And then the other 3 members are elected. So I think we just,
I'm not hearing you.
you can't hear this?
Yeah. I'm not sure if this is going out on cable television or not, but
You're loud and clear, Bill, but
Yeah,
you don't,
voice.
you can't hear us?
yeah. You can't. My sound is working here. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, very loud and clear.
You're cutting in and out, Bill. Every other word.
I think it's on your end, because we're pretty clear here.
Sit here.
All right. So yes. So we have in our charter just 1 sentence on the housing authority, which we need to correct to make it consistent with the current law in terms of appointments and elected representatives. Betsy? Right. So Betsy moves that we change the charter language to reflect the current state law requirement as to the 5 members of the housing authority and the fact that 3 are to be elected and 2 are to be appointed, and who does the appointments, which is this. Somebody's making.
I will second the motion.
Okay. Larry, Pizer.
Given that state law changed,
Right.
should there be a proviso about what would happen if state law changed again? I mean, because, the big point that we're trying to make is the town elects 3 people. And if state law, until about 5 years ago, the town elected 4 people, and the state appointed 1. Now, the state changed its mind in a very slow and sad, meandering fashion, but they eventually put into effect that there's 3 by the town. So I think that if we were, I don't have it in front of me, but if we were to put in that the town elects 3 members, that's the key part of it. But at the end, say, unless there is a change in state law, that,
I'm not sure you could have a sort of a conditional upon
No,
the future,
I
but
wouldn't either.
this is the wording right here,
10,
which is in, it's on page, let's see, it's 4-1-1,
okay.
4-1-1. I understand what
Anyone
you,
can hear me, Mr. Chairman? I don't know, I can't hear anything. Did someone say something to PAC? Maybe it's something being broadcast by PAC, because you're cutting in, it's like a cut in and out sound. So even though Larry spoke at length, it looked pretty good, and he couldn't understand it.
I'm working on it. I have recorded with me.
So if you can ask the guy in the
Hey,
You're
hey,
talking
Bill,
to him.
PAC TV is working on it.
check, I can.
Bill, your.
Bill, PAC TV is working on it.
Bill, your comments has been heard, and they're working on it here to correct that glitch.
You can't hear it.
Okay, so I think,
Oh, that's a good idea.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so what we would change it to perhaps is a housing authority of 5 members.
Right.
3 to be elected.
Right.
1 to be appointed in accordance with applicable law. Well, 2 to be appointed.
Two.
2 to be appointed in accordance with applicable law for 5-year overlapping terms.
right. You would like to put something in, or is the law otherwise provides?
I guess it's probably unnecessary because this is, our
I don't think
charter
it's
is state law,
Right.
basically. And if the state were to change state law, it would override our charter.
Right,
Right.
So,
not to worry.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Back
let's,
to your original thing of why
yeah.
do we put it in if it's state law?
Larry, why don't you make that into a motion?
okay, that we, if you look at 4-1-1, our present line 1072, a housing authority of 5 members, 3, change 4 to 3 to be elected, and 2 to be appointed in accordance with applicable law for
That does it.
5-year overlapping terms.
Okay, seconded?
I'll second.
Seconded? Any further discussion? All in favor of Mr. Pai's motion?
Aye.
Aye. Looks like it's all of us here present. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 in favor. It passes. Bill, did you vote? I don't think Bill heard it. Okay, so that takes care of the AG's opinion letter. There were 3 additional edits that I made inquiry of our legal counsel to get his opinion on it. And I'll mention each one of them. First was the fact that the Attorney General's letter was incorrect in referring to our town meetings by saying we had three town meetings per year. And Mr. Pizer pointed out that one of those town meetings is optional. Our counsel thinks that nothing needs to be done about it, that we know it's an error, but because his opinion was, yes, it's a required meeting, but it can be waived, and that's the way the charter currently reads. In order to get rid of the January meeting, you have to have a joint majority vote of the Select Board and the Committee of Precinct Chairs. So I don't think we need to do anything further on that.
Are you referring to page 10 under section 4 where it says the representative town meeting shall be scheduled to meet at least 3 times? Is that what you're referring to? In the draft we just got.
Right.
It's on page 10. I'm just wondering if that's what you're referring to. Page 10, under section 4, it says the representative town meeting shall be scheduled to meet at least 3 times in each calendar year. Is that what you're referring to, Bill? I'm sorry, because I wasn't sure where it was in the draft.
Betsy, which, are you looking at the
Page
red line?
10, I got the red line issue from October 3rd. It was in tonight's packet in front of me. And on page 10, in the middle of the page, it says town meeting shall be scheduled to meet at least 3 times. I'm wondering if your comments are referring to that.
But
That's what I understand,
it
his
then
comments.
goes on to say a third, non-mandatory. So it's
Right.
scheduled, but non-mandatory.
So is that what Bill is talking about right now? Is
Yeah.
this section? Okay, he didn't refer to the section, so I just wanted to be sure.
Right, those are the right sections. a third then we described the three meetings, the third one, it says a non-mandatory town meeting.
And it might be waived.
Yeah,
Says
and
it
it can be waived by a majority vote of the select board and the COPC.
So I make a motion to leave the language unchanged.
Second.
Okay? Any further discussion?
Yes. I guess my question is whether the Attorney General's letter has any sort of control other than advice.
Well, this is why I asked our counsel, and he felt that, given her language, we're still okay, because she talked like these were mandatory meetings, and he says, yeah, it is mandatory, but it can be waived, according to the charter. So he was
Mandatory
okay with what
schedule.
she said in her letter.
Except, I agree,
Right.
but it does say non-mandatory in our, I don't think that there's an effective problem, except the concern I have is that 5 years down the road, if someone came to us and said, yeah, but the Assistant Attorney General in her letter said,
I walked around, again, walk around.
does that have an effect? I mean, the existence of her letter.
No, the letter is just suggestions to us.
Okay,
We may want to make changes to our charter.
okay, I'm in
Right.
support of the motion.
We had asked her opinion.
Any further discussion? So all in favor of, was it David Peck's motion? All in favor of David Peck's motion, raise your hand. So there'll be no changes on that point. Okay, the second item,
Voting, but I can't vote. Can
Sorry.
someone type me what's going on with this motion? Maybe I can vote if someone types me a message in the chat.
Bill,
I logged in and logged out, it didn't work.
Could you text him that we're working on the sound and he's gonna?
Bill, we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, no, the issue he's having is very real, but we're working on it.
I'm just cutting it in and out.
They're working on it, Bill.
I logged off and logged on. Oh, my phone? Yep, okay. Calling now.
We had someone on our end.
Is he going to call you?
Okay, the second point that was in my email to our council had to do with rights of nature, which we've already discussed. And the third point was a question that I raised, and it had been raised to me by folks. How is the moderator to be elected at town meeting? What sort of vote? How is the vote to be taken? And given that our charter already says that no votes at town meeting will be by secret ballot, any discussion as to how that would take place? Yes. I think sort of the default of that language would be there would be a written vote, and our council suggests signed by each town meeting representative, and that's the way the vote would be taken at town meeting. So a town meeting representative would sign a piece of paper, his own name on it, and vote for the moderator or whoever's running for moderator. So it wouldn't be a secret ballot, it'd be a public ballot, but yet it would be, more than just a show of hands.
Couldn't we use the V-voter, no?
But if you have three or four
Yeah, Could you
candidates-
use the clicker, Bill?
Sorry,
I'm trying to
can you
figure
use
out
the
how do
clicker?
that. They'd have to program it. What if there's three candidates?
Then
You could use the clicker, I suppose,
Ye-
but,
They must be able to have three answers, but we'd have to
No,
ask.
but
quite
then-
sure that
and
it's
then,
doable.
It
You
could,
vote for
it
each.
could
Question
be
is-
Bill Abbott, one, Betsy Hall, one. and
Two.
Then you,
Tally the
know,
votes.
Yeah.
Whoever gets the most votes wins.
so we
Right.
really don't need it specified in the charter,
No, I don't
but I
think
just
so.
wanted to have a discussion as so we're not sort of puzzling what to do the first time it comes to pass. He was suggesting you might want to, use, was it rank voting? But that gets too complicated.
I think you
Yes.
go by what the voting is for the town meeting.
Do we have a nomination process?
Yes. In January, between January and a couple of weeks before town meeting, somebody has to say, I want to be a moderator. He announces his candidacy.
And that's
Right.
That's it.
Yep, I think he has to get signatures. It's in the charter when it talks about the nominating process.
Yeah, it's on page 14.
Page what?
14 of the draft in front of us.
Right, 2-8-1.
281.
No, actually, there's another provision that actually talks about somebody who wants to be a candidate for town. It's later in the charter. I'll find it. Let's see. It's section 5-5-1, which is line 1162. Any registered voter seeking the office of moderator shall file a declaration of intent to serve as moderator with the town clerk. Such declaration shall be filed no later than 60 days prior to the end of the incumbent moderator's term and no earlier than the first business day of the new calendar year during which such term ends. So it's in the section 5, nomination of candidates for election to town moderator. Betsy?
I do see a problem with V voter because it says that the voting is at the beginning of the meeting, the results are announced at the end of the meeting, whereas with V voter, it shows immediately how people voted, right? So the idea of a written ballot, I know we're just talking about it because it's not going to be in the charter, but a written ballot with everybody's name on it, you check the name off and you sign your name, that might be pretty fast and easy to do. Just hand out a ballot, and then everybody gets to,
You know, I really think that the method of voting can be worked out. I mean, it doesn't have to, we don't have to spell out all the
Not
details
tonight,
of
no.
how we're going to vote for them in the charter.
yeah, okay.
But you are pointing out a, sort of a timing thing, that you vote at the beginning and it's not announced till the end.
Right.
So
Yeah, so I just thought I'd mention it.
Well, that's just technical. I
Right,
mean,
yeah.
You know, you could,
Be all set now.
Thank you.
Bill, can you hear us?
Bill said we can hear, he can hear.
Yes, good.
you can know the outcome without having announced it. I mean, I think the point is that the person who is the moderator at the beginning of the meeting is going to be the moderator all the way to the end
Yes,
of the
correct.
meeting.
Right, right. That's what we
That's
want.
the only point. So,
That's what we want.
you know, it certainly could be voted electronically. That's by far the simplest method.
And I think that's something we don't need to decide here this evening.
Right.
So that means that, are we, Mr. Chairman, are you
Yeah.
suggesting we make no change?
Yes. no change.
I would move that we make no change in the matter of the election of the moderator.
Yeah, nobody was really suggesting a change, although people had questions. I just want to sort
Yep.
of we looked it up, see how it's going to work, and I think it works. Right.
Okay, I withdraw the motion.
So do we have any other, oh, yes, the question of representative town meeting member or just town meeting member, remember that question? No, we were going to, remember, research that. So I went through the charter, Michelle actually went through the charter, in most of the places, by far outnumber any other way we refer to them, is representative town meeting member. That's used most frequently through the charter. In a few places, it just says town meeting member, and it would be very easy simply to insert the word representative there as well. And it's done.
well, but you don't want to say the redundancy of have a representative, town meeting representative. I mean, that's a little
Right.
silly. And we are a representative town meeting, legally. I mean, that's the form of government that Massachusetts recognizes.
So are we in agreement that when we're trying to refer to a town meeting representative, it'll say representative town meeting member? Bill?
Oh, no. Oh, so I just thought, I think it should be concurred, Mr. Chairman, I think that we should go with something simple where it's, you are a town meeting representative and you're a member of this body that is town meeting. So I think it's town meeting representative is what we were trying to achieve, the official title of the office holder.
But I think, if I may,
Larry?
the compromise of Mr. Peck's words, if we were to say representative town meeting member, I think it's quite clear that we're saying we're representing the population of Plymouth
Right.
and as members of town meeting. Best of both worlds.
Yeah,
Because
I'm fine
frequently
with that.
we
It just
refer to
doesn't make sense
representative
be-
town
have
meeting when-
Representative
when
town meeting
referring to
member,
the town meeting.
representative. That's-
So, this is, again, I think when we were talking about this, we were trying to make it flow better and sound better and be more concise. And the word, I thought we had discussed, and we all voted in support of calling the person who holds the position town meeting representative, instead of a town meeting member, just a town meeting representative, the member not being part of that identification. Obviously, if you serve the body, you're a member of it, you can be referred to as a member of this body, but the actual person holding the office is a town meeting representative. I know it, is that what we're discussing? I was trying to figure out that. Sometimes I can hear you guys a little bit. It goes in and out a tiny bit, but it's much better now. Is that what you're looking at?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Larry?
I think at the last meeting, we decided to defer and
Right.
not choose one or the other to say that they were going to work. But if we were to fasten on the forward phrase, it seems to me that what we're trying to accomplish is accomplished. We're telling people that we're representing them.
I mean, if you look at the charter and read through it, it's consistent with the other words we use there. Every time we refer to town meeting, it usually says representative town meeting. And then you come to a member, it says representative town meeting member. I mean, then it all flows. Then it's quite readable. Betsy?
Was it Scott? Scott, did you originally bring up this question about town meeting members that were not town meeting members, were town meeting representatives? Someone brought that up. I don't remember.
I initially.
Oh, you were the one who brought that
I
up.
initially brought it up weeks ago, but a town meeting member, town meeting representative, Charlie Matherson came to our last meeting and further elaborated on this idea. And the committee seemed to be comfortable with just simply calling the elected person a town meeting representative.
Well,
That was who we were gravitating to. Instead of, what was the, Larry was calling, I'm referring to them as a town meeting representative. Larry, you were saying that it should be referred to as a,
Representative, town meeting member. Got both of them in there.
Right.
town meeting member representative?
No, representative town meeting
member.
Okay.
Each time we refer,
Yeah, it seems easier just to simply call the person a town meeting representative. Unless I defer to the group what they want, I would think that we would want to keep it simple.
I will make a motion to use the phrase representative town meeting member.
Okay. Seconded? Any further discussion? All in favor of Mr. Peck's motion, which is to use the phrase representative town meeting member? Raise their hand. So we have,
So we're going to change it everywhere in
You
the
need to-
charter. Is that correct?
I think Bill's going to vote no.
Bill, did you vote?
I
All
voted-
those-
You didn't call you just called for it. I was waiting.
All
for my,
those opposed to the motion?
I would be in opposed to the motion, yes.
So, Bill, the plan is just to go into the final draft here and change everywhere it says anything to do with town meeting member to representative town meeting member.
Right.
Okay.
So it's 7 in favor and 1 in opposition. It'll be representative town meeting member. I think those were the edits that we currently have. Does anybody have any other edits?
No.
I think Michelle put together this latest draft, which is October 3rd, that has all of the edits in it except this last one we just made. And they're all covered in the minutes, so I would suggest we not approve the 2 sets of minutes. Just go through the draft one more time and be sure the edits are as we all voted
Mr. Chairman?
previously. Yes.
I will be leaving shortly, and just want to, make note that we've submitted the final minority report, which is signed by 3 of us. It's in your package, and should any other member wish to join us, to add their name, that's fine, but just want to, sort of officially, it has been officially submitted, been wordsmithed with several people, but myself, Wrestling Brewster, and Scott Vecchi are the 3 signatories. And as I note in the minority report, we will work for the approval of this charter as an improvement over our existing one, even though in the big picture, we'd prefer it to have been a council form, but we are in support and will be in support between now and next May when it appears on the ballot. But again, anyone else who might want to join in the minority report, let us know. But just want to officially say it is submitted to be part of the package.
David, it's actually officially it's called a minority statement. Right, David?
David, I'm looking at this, and it says draft, September 19th.
Yeah.
That's your latest,
That is. So we would remove the word draft, but
okay, but that's the wording.
yes,
The
Thank
one
you.
that says October 12th on it.
yes.
There's one that says October 12th.
David, is it your intent then to vote in favor of the final report, but submit a minority statement?
Last page.
Say that again, Mr. Chairman?
Will you be supporting the final report and sign that,
Yes,
together with your minority statement?
yes.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
You're welcome. And with that, I will go off and sing.
Right. So let's see, we need to, at this point, we need to do 3 things. We need to confirm the edits, which I'm not ready to do yet tonight until I've gone through the draft with all these edits and see if they conform to what we voted previously. That's number 1. We need to decide what we're going to have for additional material to go in the final report. So I think that's something that we need to get together within the next 10 days, explaining the charter. And thirdly, we need to talk a bit about transition. Now, the Collins group is not here tonight on purpose because they knew we were going to be dealing with these edits and so forth, but they want to come back next week and talk about transitional provisions. And because we need to put in such questions as, for example, do we shorten the term of the moderator? It won't be 3 years will he be elected at this very next spring town meeting in spring of 2024? I mean, the charter is going to take effect on July 1st. But the moderator, the first time we can elect the moderator would be the following spring.
Right.
So he will not have served as a 3-year term. Just so we know that. The select board, I don't see how there's any real change in the select board.
Oh, there is.
Okay, go ahead.
If the charter passes,
Yep.
the first election would be for district members, but there would be a select board member or 2 whose term
Yes.
expires, so that
Wouldn't feel-
there are too many select board members. I mean, we have to determine how we get from 5 select board members at large to 4 select board members at large.
Right.
So that's the transition decision that we're going to have to make, whether we take, somewhere along the line, we're going to have to say who doesn't.
Right, do you have a
Because
term?
you don't want overlap. You do want overlap, but you don't want them all to be running at the same time.
Well,
Right.
I'm assuming that what we talked about was 1 year, we'll say, year one, 3 district elections only. Year two, 2 select board members. Year 3, 2 select board members. Year 4, we're back to year 1.
Yeah.
And in order to get there, somewhere along the line, there can't be 3-year terms. I mean, there are 2 select board members, if I'm not mistaken, whose terms end
Right.
in May of 2024. And so, I guess well, there are 5 select board members, so one of the select board members has to be eliminated at one point or another. And I think we have to determine how that the term is going to end. I mean, make a statement that the term ends.
Larry, they were suggesting, or that we talk about that tonight, with some suggestions.
Okay. Let's see who we have presently elected and when.
This year coming up in the spring is Betty and Dicky. So next year, it should be Harry. That would be in '25, should be Harry.
But what we're saying, 25 or 24?
In '23, it's Dicky and Betty.
Okay.
In '24, it's Harry.
But if I have my numbers correct, 23, let's just say it passes, it would be passing in 23. In 24, we would have the district elections. So what happens? Harry's just out?
Or he runs for a district. I don't know.
Okay, so as long as we're clear that what we're going to do is eliminate the 1 year, in a way, it falls pretty nicely, the fact that we're eliminating one person and there's a 1 year, the single person running that year. So, yeah, if we were to do that, you're right. Harry would have to choose either to run as a district, or he could run against Betty and Dicky if he chose to extend his term and then resign his. I don't want to predict for Harry, but as long as he and the town are aware of what's going to happen, I think that's successful.
Betsy?
There are 2 things that we would need to do about the select board. One is having someone decide what the districts are, right? So there has to be a transition around who decides where the districts are.
That's already in the charter.
Right. And the second thing is, I'm wondering if we could do with the select board what we did with town meeting. Everybody has to run at once. And the district people get elected to the district, and then the people who, yeah, that's right, yeah. Yeah, and so that, it'd be kind of like town meeting. Yeah, so we would just have everybody run at once. So there'd be nobody guaranteed in 2024. You would either run from your district, or you would run at large, and then it would just be the person who got the most votes, got 3 years.
2 and 1.
So Betsy, you're suggesting that just everybody would run in 23?
24.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, just
24,
like, she said, just like we had to do when we redistricted town meeting.
Right.
Top vote getter gets 3, second one gets 2, and third one gets 1.
That's one
do you think?
possibility.
Yeah.
Are we clear that we have the ability to cut off
Yes.
elected selectmen,
According,
select
yes.
board
We
members?
did with town meeting.
We did with town meeting.
Not, well,
According to
yeah,
our,
but in town, In town meeting, that's because the precinct disappeared.
No, it didn't.
Yes, it is. That one I know. Someone was elected from a specific area.
Yeah.
That specific area no longer exists. Every precinct changed
Oh,
in,
okay.
in Plymouth, and
Except
that's.
for yours.
No, no.
kidding.
Every precinct changed.
Okay.
I mean, you might have the same number, but every precinct changed.
But I think-
And with select board members, the town of Plymouth is still the town of Plymouth.
Yeah,
No,
but
because
Larry,
now
we could be
now we have-
changing the form of government so there's no select board member.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
So-
think that's an
So
issue.
surely we can cut the term short.
Yeah. I would think that, I like that idea, because everybody starts from
Right.
scratch. And
Easy.
it's kind of what we wanted to do, is we wanted to create a new, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think,
I like
David? Does that work?
Well, it's different, but it has been done before, because many, many, many years ago, when we went from 3 to 5, it had to be done that way. So I don't think it's a problem.
Cool, David, I'm glad you knew that.
Wow.
Scott, you know,
You're a historian.
Did you get that from John Mahoney?
Yeah, I mean,
Did you get that information from John
I
Mahoney?
agree. I mean, it's, well,
I mean, have one election of all of them?
I mean, like Larry said, that, you know, that way would be cleaner when one person is up for one. I think, you know, having everybody run all at once might create a little more of a circus than we intend for it to do. I mean, you know, we might turn an election into a selectman cage match where we're all fighting with each other, trying to, you know, not be the one without a chair. I think it might, like you said, that the way where Harry's seat winds up
But you're still gonna be running,
might be a little cleaner. It might not, like I said, I hate to see this turn into a giant political circus when what we're trying to accomplish is to streamline, where advice we turn it into everybody up in the air all at once, and it becomes a mess.
Okay, so we got
So-
two views.
Maybe David could explain to us a little bit more what happened when we went from 3 selectmen to 5.
Well, it just so happened that Cozy Barrett got reelected. No surprise. And there was an election, and there were a whole bunch of candidates, and it was probably similar to what we're seeing now. You know, top voters got 3-year terms, you know, so forth and so on. And as far as being a circus, when I ran in 1981, Scott, there were 10 people vying for 2 seats. Wow. So
That's great.
it works out. I think it could work
It's a
out.
political process, that's democracy.
So
Yeah, that's
Larry, how do you
wonderful.
decide
I'd
who
love to
gets
see it.
3 votes?
Well,
Who gets
I
3
mean,
years,
well-
2 years, and so forth?
Okay, so let's try to do the numbers again. So charter passes in '23. In '24, there are district elections, and the top 2 vote getters receive 2-year terms, because we have to, the
Yeah.
district has to have a 3-year term.
Yeah, right.
So the top 2 vote getters get 2-year terms.
Yep,
The second 2 voters get 1-year terms.
yep.
And then going on from there, all select board terms are 3-year terms.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
So someone has to just write, you know,
well, that's what we're
write
going to
that
do
down
next
into
week.
the
I'll write it
transition.
down.
Right.
Up in, I mean, that's, as we've seen, we could talk about other ways of doing it, but that's,
No, this is good. We wanted to have, sort of discuss it tonight.
I think that it would, I thought it was gonna be more of a circus when we had the town meeting people all running at the same time, but I thought democracy was fantastic, you know, because everybody had to run, and you weren't running as, you know, a current member. You know, I had to run an entire new precinct. And it was interesting, you know, to watch democracy happen, because it was, you know, I wasn't running where I've run for the past 10 years. I had to go to a completely new place with completely new people. And it was interesting watching, people who automatically won, they didn't have to do anything, had to get out and do something. I thought it was interesting.
And you still prevailed?
Yeah, but Michael Withington, who does nothing, still gets the number one vote.
So, Bill, do we have to also make the statement that all select board terms end as of,
Yeah, we have to spell this out in the transition.
okay,
Right.
step one, all select board member terms end on election day of May of 2024. And then we go to and there will be 3 district people elected for 3-year terms, 2 select board one group of select board election, just one election for select board, and the top 2 vote getters get 2-year terms, the second 2 vote getters get 1-year term, and then subsequently, all select board elections include 3-year terms.
It's just that first year, that's just that transition year. After that, it'll be smooth.
Yeah, that's why we have to come up with a transition.
Right.
Bill Cohan, do you have a input, comment?
No, I'm just listening to the logistics. I'm fine. I'm kind of just listening to Larry and deferring to Larry in terms of how he sees this working. I mean, he has have been a clerk for 35, 40 years for Plymouth, so I think Larry is touching on what we have to be sensitive to, the logistics of how we handle this transition if the charter does pass. So I'm just listening.
So we've discussed the moderator and the select board. Any other transitional? Good. Anything else we want to deal with in the charter? Michelle, is there any public comment? Yes, Pat. No.
Oh, that one, sorry. Pat McCarthy, Precinct 18, Vice Chair. First, I'd like to thank all of you for all your hard work over all this time in working on a new charter. And I certainly hope it generates some interest in the citizens of Plymouth, and in particular in following through and voting. But I did want to express a concern, and I have spoken to a couple of people about this, and I know the point you are in your charter right now, probably this cannot happen. However, I need to mention what I need to mention following Saturday, town meeting. One of my biggest concerns all along, as you were deliberating and watching, and I did watch the meeting when you discussed how many meetings. I watched at least one of them on the issue of how many town meeting members per precinct should be. And I just strongly feel that it should be less than 9, because in May of '22, with re-precincting, all of us were up for election. All of us knew that we had COVID in the nation. All of us knew that COVID's here to stay. And so, therefore, all of us who ran chose to run knowing that we would be going to in-person town meetings. Maybe not immediately, but in person. In that election, there were 34 write-in candidates. So 34 people got elected maybe with 1, 2, 3 votes. My concern was certainly there was a lack of interest in being a town meeting member, And following that, probably a lack of getting to be knowledgeable about what town meeting is. And we were in the virtual era, making it even harder. And we had a pretty chaotic June town meeting that went for 11 hours virtually. And I think that all of the new people, and then there were 27 new town meeting members besides that, the write-ins, so we have 61 new people going into this town meeting. And of those, the 27 brand-new ones from the new precincts. And then, looking back, there were many people who no longer served as town meeting that retired or left or whatever. So, going into this town meeting with 106, we're down one because of resignation or death. I'm not sure why, but there's 161 currently. Not 162, but 162 positions. So when we went into, and of all of those people, I always hope that people pay attention to the issues and become knowledgeable about what's going on. So going into town meeting on Saturday, and I'm just going to mention this because I wish there was some miracle that you could reduce the number of 9 to a lesser number per precinct to get people more interested and have serious people running that want to serve the town with full knowledge of what that entails. On Saturday, at the high point in the town, and from what I can gather in looking at the final report of the motion packet today that we got from Jeanette, and they did a wonderful job, and I'm just complimenting the FinCom and people that ran it and put the meeting together, and I was so glad we were there in person. I mean, we had a lot of dialogue, et cetera. But at the high point in the meeting, there was 127 people voting. So at another low point in the meeting, somebody said there were only 99 clickers signed out. And then at another point in the meeting, when the quorum was questioned, there was 106 people that had voted. So we lost 21 people that day, and in light of all the new town meeting members, and I haven't had a chance to analyze, there were definite reasons why some people couldn't be there, and we understand that always happens. Those people notified the town clerk if they did what they were supposed to, and we can question that, why they didn't come. And I don't think it was because they were all afraid of COVID. There were only 7 people that chose to be in the masked room. Those of us were spread out safely in the big Performing Arts Center. So my point is, I hope that going forward that our government works better, but I'm very concerned about the fact that we still have a lack of interest or a lack of knowledge or whatever it is, that you can't even get 9 people to run in a precinct now. And I just think if there was a miracle, and I did speak to a couple people about this before I decided to say anything tonight, which I debated since, full knowledge. I stood up and another town meeting member stood up, and we knew that we did not have a quorum voting. But then another person stood up and moved the motion, because that was the protocol, to question the quorum. And there was no quorum. And then a lot of us called town meeting members to get them to come back. So we got a high number at that point of 109 and then 108 voting at the end of the day. So those are my concerns. I wish there were a way to reconsider that one issue. And I know there's probably not, but I needed to address that. And I hope in all the work that you go out spreading the good news about what you're trying to accomplish, that you really are able to educate voters. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you, Pat. Yes.
I just want to comment, as you know, as we all know, it went to a vote, and there were 4 of us, Wrestling, David Peck, myself, and Scott, who recommended a fewer number. But it was a 5-4 vote, and the majority ruled, so we have to accept it. I still feel that a leaner, meaner town meeting is the better way to go. And I know we can't reconsider, at least I don't think we can at this point in time. It's distressing to me that there wasn't a little bit more responsibility on the part of the town meeting members, or the representative town meeting members, whatever you want to call them. It seems to me if you sign up for that commitment, you should be prepared to honor that commitment. But I have to say, having attended many, many, many sessions of town meeting, not as many as Larry, but close, there were only 1 or 2 times when a quorum was questioned. It was very, very rare to lose a quorum. And I'm concerned, I am as concerned now as I was when I made my motion for fewer than 9. I'm concerned that it's too many people, it's too much of a responsibility to try to get 9 precinct members, 9 members per precinct. It's just too much of a responsibility, and it shows. I commend those who came back because it's important to continue the town's business, but I still feel, and I will always feel, despite the fact that I was in the losing end of the vote, that a leaner, meaner town meeting is better.
Presley?
I thank Mr. Malaguti for his comments, because he's been in this form of government for a long time, and his history is much appreciated.
Is that a nice way of saying he's old?
Yes.
Oh.
I know.
But I would, the only reason I'm speaking right now is because I think that we need to, when we're talking about our charter and our form of government, we need to, and I'm going to talk about this at precinct chairs, we need to impress upon the members of town meeting their responsibility. And it was your job as a town meeting representatives to show up at 8 o'clock, and town meeting ends when town meeting says it ends. It is not 3 o'clock, it is not 4 o'clock. It is when town meeting says it ends. I had so many new town meeting members come up to me and say, well, I was told it ended at 4 o'clock. No, it does not end at 4 o'clock. And I just want to impress upon this group and the charter and anybody in town, you have a responsibility. And the moderator kept telling me that he forecasted this, and if we had had virtual, this wouldn't happen. I again, caution town meeting and caution our town meeting is a responsibility. And whether we have it virtually or we have it wherever, there's a responsibility. And I applaud Pat for getting up, because it's a responsibility. And I fear that people don't feel that it's a responsibility. Thank you.
Other comment, Larry? Betsy?
I was thrilled with town meeting this time. Up until we didn't have a quorum, I think there were misunderstandings, and people were at weddings and sick, and people didn't want to come in because it was in person. But the town meeting itself, I thought, was wonderful. I thought that a lot of people asked a lot of great questions, that we got really great responses from people from the departments or the people who put on, were sponsoring the article. I thought the town meeting was great. And I was shocked when we went into the chaos at the end, but it doesn't, for me, cancel or erase how great town meeting did go when those 100, and I see Pat shaking her head, and I think she agrees, and we all agree that it was a good town meeting. And there may have been people who thought it would end at 4 and had made plans, and, it's the first time we've had 18 precincts, and so I don't think it's shocking that there were slippage. But I think at the next town meeting, I think a lot of people will know, look, people were embarrassed. I called people and got them to come back, and people said to me on the phone, oh, I thought it was over. So it was a misunderstanding. A lot of people, I mean, had never done town meeting before, but I do think that a lot of the people who had never done town meeting before saw a really great town meeting. Yeah, I really do. And so I think that we shouldn't be too discouraged about this first town meeting after redistricting. And I think that, I don't know if the state will let us go hybrid. I love doing an in-person town meeting. Who knows what's going to happen with COVID over the winter? I have no idea. But I think we want to, as Wrestling said, I agree with him and I agree with Pat, we want to be sure that all our new town meeting members understand what it's like. We want to make sure they all have a handbook. We want to make sure that they all understand your vote is setting the taxes in this town. Your vote is setting the zoning in this town. These are huge issues that you have a responsibility to study, learn, and make informed decisions. So, and I think that the 125 people that were there for the most part, they seemed very informed, very committed, and I'm okay if out of 161 people, 125 are there and are 100% committed to making a good town meeting. I think that's fine. I don't think we need all 161 people there, but I think that every precinct has the opportunity to present 9 candidates. If they present 8, if they present 7, that's up to that precinct. And I'm not saying, oh, well, I'm going to look down on that precinct because they only have 7 people. Well, those 7 people, if they're committed and responsive, then that's great. Let's have those 7.
Larry?
I'm not going to relitigate what we already decided, but I am sure that Wrestling and the other 17 members of the Committee of Precinct Chairs will certainly, between now and the next time town meeting comes together, they only have 8 people to talk to, not 161 people to talk to. And therefore, I think if there's a problem with new people misunderstanding, and who knows? I mean, it's a little early to take one example and try to extrapolate somewhere. But I think we're going to see what happens once these people, now that we've seen that some people might not have understood, I think that it will be useful to see what happens, assuming that there isn't a special between now and April, what happens when April comes.
Right. Given the complexities of Saturday's town meeting, in the face of COVID, separate rooms, I mean, I was actually amazed at how well it went. I mean, so many things could have gone wrong, but it went just like clockwork until the final 30 minutes, the hiccup at the end. But with everything that the moderator had to deal with, I thought it came off extraordinarily well. I'd just say one other thing. A few years ago, the size of town meeting was a big issue on town meeting floor. And I remember we did a PowerPoint. Plymouth is really still at the very low end in terms of numbers of town meeting members. So I have to think we've got to make it work. I mean, town meetings are twice our size that are working quite effectively. So it's a matter of educating, and these town meeting members, I think as Pat said, their experience level here was only a few weeks, but hopefully now they're beginning to learn and they will beginning to jump in, and it's just going to get better, not worse. David?
I would question, for example, Mark Sylvia's town of Fairhaven. That, I believe, was, how many members in 240, was it, or was it even
Well,
higher?
they're at one extreme.
Dartmouth is 240.
Dartmouth is 240. Well, Fairhaven
I don't
is,
know what Fairhaven is.
Fairhaven is even more, I think. I could look back in my notes, but it'll take me a while to find it. But I would question, with these larger town meetings, what is the quorum requirement? Is it always 2/3?
No, we're a majority.
It is what it is. Whatever you determine the quorum to be, there are towns without a quorum.
The way when I watched Mark Sylvia, I believe they have 400 and there's a 100 quorum.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Yes.
that's my point. Maybe we need to address the quorum requirements.
Okay, well, we can, edits are still possible.
I would make the note that it was noticed that it wasn't just new people who left. No, it wasn't. So it's not just a learning curve.
Okay, we have two sets of minutes, September 19th, October 3rd. I suggest we put those aside till our next meeting and have a chance to review the minutes against the edits. Is everybody okay with proceeding beyond now and taking up next item? Is there any old business? Any new business? So next Monday night, we will be in the Shallop Room. We will be on Zoom. And Colin's team will be here to go over mainly the transition provisions and any final edits. Hopefully, we won't have to meet again on the 31st, but we also have to start drafting the additional materials to go with the final report. I'll start cutting out a draft. Is there any further discussion about anything? Then a motion would be in order.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor of adjournment? Thank you very much. We're adjourned.